Chinese Kung Fu. There are the so-called external styles, internal styles, long fist, Shaolin, Wudang. There are many ways to categorize Kung Fu fighting styles, but in this video, I want to talk about one of the most common ways, and that is using geography. You see, people have noticed that the fighting styles of the north and the south of China are different. In northern styles, you will see wide stances, high kicks, and acrobatic techniques. And in southern styles, you'll see more emphasis on hand techniques, very close-range fighting, stable, less dynamic stances, and low kicks. In fact, there is even a saying, 南拳北腿, southern fists and northern legs, referring to what the northern and southern styles are famous for. There are some very practical reasons for these differences, including differences in geography, the physical qualities of the people who live in those regions, and also reasons relating to religions and various temples, secret societies, and the military. And in this video, we're going to go through them all and talk about what makes northern and southern styles of Chinese martial arts unique. This is Northern and Southern Kung Fu Styles Explained. The dividing line between North and South China is normally set at the Yangtze River, or Changjiang in Chinese. It goes through famous cities like Chongqing, known for its multi-level design and impressive light shows. Then you have Wuhan, known for its wet markets and scientific laboratories. Moving on. And then we have Shanghai, which of course everyone knows as the financial capital of China. In the eastern part of China, north of the Yangtze, you have vast open plains. This area is known as Zhongyuan, or the Central Plains. All of China's capital cities throughout history have been north of the Yangtze River, except for one period where the capital was at Hangzhou during the Southern Song Dynasty, but that's because they had been invaded and lost control of the north, so they had to move south. But in general, the north has had more of a close connection to the central government and the military. Then in the south, the landscape is very different. You have dense jungle, you have limestone karst mountains that protrude out of nowhere. The farming is generally rice farming, so you have wet paddy fields with narrow paths in between, and there's a lot of travel by boat. For many hundreds of years, the south was more of a wild place where Chinese populations mixed with the local tribes that lived on the periphery of the Chinese Empire. But how does all this relate to Kung Fu? Let's look at the northern styles first. Beiquan, Northern Kung Fu. So what are the northern styles? Well, here is a list of some of the main styles. Changquan, or long fist. This is kind of the representative style of the north, right? The quintessential northern style. It is a Shaolin-derived style and encompasses a lot of what is taught at the Shaolin Temple in Henan province, which is north of the Yangtze River. You could also say northern Shaolin. Then you have the three major internal styles, Ba Gua Zhang, Xing Yi Quan, and Tai Chi Quan. These are also considered northern styles, as are the martial arts styles practiced at Wudang Mountain, which are also internal, and Wudang is also north of the Yangtze River. Then we have a load of other styles that are spread amongst the people, like Northern Praying Mantis Kung Fu, Tongbei, Pigua, etc. There are three provinces in the north that are hotbeds of martial arts activity. These are Henan, Hebei, and Shandong. And then I guess if we include Wudang Mountain, you could say Hubei as well, since that's where it's located. Xing Yi Quan also has a connection with Shanxi province, because that's where it was passed down for many years. Northern styles tend to use wide bow and arrow stances, or Gong Bu, as their most common stance. There are other stances like Ma Bu, horse stance, or Pu Bu, also tend to be pretty wide and low as well. They often move and punch at the same time, and you'll see a lot of kick techniques, especially high kicks. So when you see Wang Feihong doing this in Once Upon a Time in China, well, he wouldn't have actually done all those high kicks, since the real historical figure did not practice a northern style. But Jet Li, who played the character, learned competitive wushu, which is based on northern long fist, Changquan, and thus that is what you see in the movies. It also does look a lot more exciting on screen to see high kicks and something more acrobatic. While Tai Chi Quan uses these wide bow and arrow stances too, The other two main internal styles, Xing Yi Quan and Ba Gua Zhang, are a little different, and their standard stance is not that Shaolin-derived bow and arrow stance, but they are from the north, and they still share a lot of characteristics with northern styles, like always taking a step while they strike. This is really obvious in Xing Yi Quan. Then what is the reason for the northern styles featuring larger moves, wider stances, stepping while punching, and more acrobatic techniques? Well, the answers generally given for this are 1. That in the north, they had more space. It sounds simple, right? But remember, we talked about the Central Plains, aka Zhongyuan, sometimes also called the North China Plain when you extend it all the way up to the north, okay? And they call that Huabei Pingyuan. People were used to fighting in these big open areas where they could really spread themselves out and jump around. Jump around! Jump around! 2. Many of these martial arts came from military techniques first and foremost. So originally, they would have been performed with weapons, and the empty-handed forms came afterwards. So Xing Yi, for example, is based on the movements of the spear, and legend has it, it was invented by Song Dynasty general Yue Fei for use on the battlefield.
形意拳 奉岳飞为祖师.
So you can imagine if you're using a martial art on the battlefield, a wide open space with weapons, emphasizing range would really be to your advantage to keep enemy soldiers as far away as possible so they can't hurt you. Thus, the moves were elongated. The footwork features long steps so that they can use that to close the range quickly and attack when the time is right, and then get back out of range quickly afterwards. Kung Fu that was developed at the Shaolin Temple was also used to fend off wild animals like tigers, and I think you'd want to keep that thing as far away from you as possible. So footwork that lets you to get in and out quickly really makes sense. 3. People in North China are taller and larger than people in the South in general. So developing styles that emphasize larger moves and longer reach may have been a way of capitalizing on natural advantages. So to sum it up, northern styles are closely related to their source at Shaolin and Wudang. They also have a closer relationship with the military and develop from weapons first, with the spear and broadsword having most influence over the northern arts. If you're talking about the Wudang arts, then I guess you can also add the straight sword to that too, because that's a famous weapon of Wudang martial arts. Large movements and high kicks allow northern martial artists to keep opponents out of range, but long steps also allow them to close that range quickly when the time is right. One more aspect about Changquan in particular is the emphasis on elongation not only has a practical purpose in fighting, but also has a purpose for health too. There is a Chinese saying, 筋长1寸,寿延10年. This means lengthen your tendons by 1 inch and you will live an extra 10 years. When the body is stretched out and loose, it not only has more martial power, but it is also healthier and you will live longer. Alright, let's move on to talking about the southern styles. Nanquan, Southern Kung Fu. So the south of China has a few characteristics that led to different development of the martial arts. First of all, let's look at how martial arts spread in the south. Most styles in the south have an origin story that has something to do with the alleged burning of the Shaolin Temple. This is supposed to have happened in the beginning of the Qing dynasty, so in the 1600s. The Qing, who were ethnically Manchurian, so not Han Chinese, conquered the country from the previous Ming dynasty. Many Chinese were not happy about this, so there was a resistance movement called Fan Qing Fu Ming, oppose the Qing and restore the Ming. The Qing capital, like most other Chinese capitals, was in the north. So the north was conquered first, and those resisting were pushed south. Supposedly, some anti-Qing monks from the Shaolin Temple were pushed south, and they set up another Shaolin temple in Fujian province. Then either amongst these monks or coming to train with these monks were a group of 5 people who are known as the 5 elders of Shaolin, Shaolin Wuzu. They trained in Fujian for a few years and were then again chased out of this temple. It isn't really clear though whether it was supposed to be the Fujian temple, which there actually isn't any historical evidence of ever existing, or the northern Henan temple that was burned down, okay? Every martial arts club has a different version of this story. But supposedly there were these 5 elders, and amongst them were Pai Mei, who is often portrayed as a traitor, selling out the resistance to the emperor, okay? The reason the temple was burned down was because he told the emperor that they were there. And Pai Mei is of course the kung fu master featured in the movie Kill Bill. And then another one was the female master or Buddhist nun Wu Mei. So these 2, along with 3 others, so 5 masters altogether, spread out into society and the styles they passed down became Pai Mei Kung Fu, Wing Chun, Choi Lei Fat, and Hung Ga. We're using the Cantonese pronunciations for them. I'm probably butchering them, but anyway, that's the pronunciation we know for these arts in the West. But in Mandarin, they are Yong Chun, Cai Li Fo, and Hong Jia. Now, the anti-Qing movement ultimately wasn't successful, but the rebels who had fled south kept themselves secret, practicing martial arts, including the styles of the Five Elders. But they gradually forgot about overthrowing the Qing and turned to professions like bodyguarding and organized crime. And we now know these secret societies as Sanhe Hui, or the Triads. A lot of history gets pretty murky with these styles, since they were passed down in secret by criminals. So what are the characteristics of Southern styles? Well, the stances are more compact and less elongated. The hand movements are more independent of the leg movements and are often practiced on their own with the legs just in a static stance. Remember, Southern fists, Northern kicks. They also tend to take a step and sink into their stance before striking. Compare that to Northern styles where a step and punch will often occur at the same time. So these Southern styles are less dynamic than those in the North, the moves don't flow into each other quite as smoothly, and the hands are more independent of the legs. This compactness is probably because they just had less space to fight. When you're in a secret society, you're probably not fighting on a huge open battlefield where everyone can see you. No, you're going to local businesses at night to collect protection money, fighting indoors or in the alleyway behind the restaurant. Even the outdoor environment in the South is less spacious, with dense jungles and narrow mountain gorges. And in a farming environment, they had rice fields which are waterlogged with narrow paths in between them that you could walk on. There's also a lot of travel and trade by water in the South, and acting as a bodyguard on a small boat would have required a compact stance too. Wing Chun takes this compactness to an extreme, with people often saying that you could use it to fight inside a phone booth or in an elevator. And most of the kicks in the Southern styles are at or below the waist, even kicking the opponent's legs. There's that scene in Ye Wen Qian Zhuan, okay, the Ip Man prequel, where he meets his master, Lung Big, and he's like, oh, that's not Wing Chun because you're kicking too high.
你嗰啲唔係詠春，師傅話詠春係手打7分，腳踢3分嘅，專攻下山路。
Actually, the truth is, most of the Southern styles still practice the high kicks in training because they want to do it for flexibility to stretch the legs, but in the forms and in actual combat, normally the kicks are to the waist or below. And one of the best recent examples in film of the differences between Northern and Southern styles would be the fights between Ip Man and the Northern Master in Ip Man 1. You see the Northern Master throwing all these elongated whole body, very dynamic moves at Ip Man, who counters them with very compact, economical hand movements. The Northern guy kicks high, Ip Man kicks low. And then there is this, which, okay, that's not a normal Southern style weapon. But speaking of weapons, while in the North, you had all the standard weapons like the spear, the broadsword, etc. They had those in the South too, but because these styles were passed down amongst the people, there were a lot of other objects that were used as weapons, particularly farming tools. So things like the trident were originally for farming or fishing. Rice flails, where you have a long stick connected to a short stick by a chain, were both farming tools and later used as weapons. Nunchucks from Okinawa, which are a type of Japanese rice flail, and now probably the most famous example of a farming tool turned into a weapon. Bruce Lee used them in Enter the Dragon. But actually, they had them in China too, just a different design. One end was longer than the other, and it's not anything new. These things have a long history of dual use as farming tools and weapons. So those are the Southern styles. More compact, rooted stances, low kicks, hands more independent from the feet, regular weapons plus a variety of non-standard weapons, and a murky history passed down through secret societies. These styles were concentrated around Guangdong and Fujian provinces and mostly traced their lineage back to the Five Elders and the burning of the Shaolin Temple, which could just be a made-up story. Wang Fei Hung is a famous folk hero in the South, and the style he practiced was Hung Ga, which looks like this. Not like this, which is what you see in the Jet Li movie. One final aspect of the Southern styles is that they focus a lot on breathing techniques and dynamic tension in the muscles. A very famous form that I also used to practice as part of my Hung Ga or Hong Jia Kung Fu training when I was younger is called San Jian, okay, the three wars. A war with the body, a war with the breath, and a war with the mind. They used to call it building the wall, okay, developing a very strong body that could resist attacks, and also a kind of springy strength in the arms. And this is kind of a similar thing to stretching out the tendons that's done in long fist. One more subtle difference between northern styles and southern styles. Listen to this clip of a northern style. And now listen to this clip of a southern style. What do you notice? Northern styles are silent, whereas southern styles are like... Well, technically that was karate, but you get the idea. In my opinion though, and this is just my opinion, I prefer the northern styles. Even though I grew up practicing Hung Gar, I later dabbled in the internal styles and also Changquan. Southern styles seem to focus on practicality, what's going to work in a fight, whereas northern styles are kind of like the whole package, fighting, health, and beautiful movements. But that's just really my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which style is your favorite? And is it from the north or the south? And if you are a martial artist watching this, especially if you're on the east coast of the USA and you want to try and win $5,000, why not enter the New Tang Dynasty Television Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition, which I am the commentator for every year. It will be held in New York City in mid-August. I will put the link for it in the description section down below. The top prize is $5,000, like we said. This is a forms competition, so you don't need to spar with anyone, but the focus is not only on high-level technique, but also on preserving the traditional forms of Kung Fu, okay? So no modern wushu allowed here. It has to be traditional Chinese martial arts. You can compete open-handed or in weapons categories. Click the link below for all the details and how to register. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.